Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today and welcome to Dezan Associates webinar on preparing for your China individual income tax returns for 2020. My name is Sunny Makhija and I'll be hosting this webinar today. I work as an assistant manager in the marketing vertical of Dezan Associates. Before we begin, I would like to give a quick introduction of Dezan Associates for those of you who do not already know who we are. Dezan Associates is a Pan-Asia FDA specialist professional services firm. We provide market entry, legal, accounting, tax, HR, technology, and operational advisory to international investors. We have offices throughout China, ASEAN, and India, where we guide foreign companies through Asia's complex regulatory environment and assist them with all aspects of establishing, maintaining, and growing their business operations in the region. So coming to today's topic of discussion, the time to file your annual individual income tax returns for 2020 is coming soon. This is the second year of filing under China's recent tax reforms, and I'm sure many of you are already familiar with how time-consuming filing can be without proper guidance. We have Nicole Jiang here with us today to help you understand the ins and outs of filing and whether you meet the requirements to file this year. Nicole is a manager on our HR and payroll team, where she focuses on HR administration, personal income tax declaration, social security, and monthly payroll processing. At the end of the webinar, we'll be having a short Q&A session, so please submit any questions you may have in the question panels. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome Nicole to start with her presentation. Over to you, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunny. Good afternoon. This is Nicole from Dezan Associates. I'm the manager of International HR Admin and Payroll team. Nice to meet you here. And today I'd like to introduce something about the annual individual income tax returns. Hope it would help you to have a better understanding of the coming annual tax returns. Okay, let's start. Here's the table of contents of this webinar. As you could see, there are 4 sections in total. Section 1, the content of annual individual income tax return 2020. Section 2, do you need to complete the annual individual income tax returns of 2020? Section 3, annual individual income tax returns procedure and case study. And Section 4, summary Q&A. Okay, so Section 1, the content of ATR 2020. Firstly, I'd like to introduce what ATR is. ATR is abbreviation of Annual Individual Income Tax Return. According to the Individual Income Tax Law, resident individuals deriving consolidated income shall compute individual income tax on a yearly basis. Where there is a withholding agent, the withholding agent shall withhold and prepay tax on a monthly basis or based on each income item. Where there is a need for a final settlement and payment, the taxpayer shall do so during the period from March 1st to June 30 of the following year after obtaining the income. As mentioned above, the annual individual income tax return only applies to China tax resident. For China tax resident of 2020, the individual needs to self-checking and summarize the whole year's consolidated income and expenditure. Then compute the IIT of consolidated income, compare with the paid IIT, then figure out the balance. After that, individual can conduct a tax clearance, arrange tax payment or refund. Okay, the subject of annual individual income tax returns. It only applies to China tax resident. So non-China tax resident doesn't require to conduct annual individual income tax returns. There is a special situation. where a non-domiciled individual is predetermined as non-resident individual. If he satisfies the resident individual criteria due to extended number of days he or she stays in China, the tax withholding method within a tax year shall remain unchanged, and he shall complete settlement and payment for formalities at the end of the year pursuant to the relevant provisions on resident individuals. But if he or she leaves China during the year and is not expected to enter China again in the estimated year, he or she may opt to complete settlement and payment formalities before leaving China. As we talked about several verbs here, such as domicile, China tax resident, non-China tax resident, hereby I'd like to give some brief introduction about the definition of tax resident and domicile. What is the concept of domicile? Individual is regarded as being domiciled in China if he or she habitually resides in China due to household registration, family and/or economic interests. Then, how to define China tax resident? There are two categories of people will be treated as China tax resident. First is China domiciled individuals, and second is non-China domiciled individuals who stay in China for 183 days or more in a tax year. Well, if non-China domiciled individuals who stay in China for less than 183 days in a tax year, they will be deemed as non-China tax resident of the year. Let's take a look at the scope of the annual individual income tax returns. We will conduct the tax clearance for consolidated income during the annual individual income tax returns, which includes salary income, personal service income, royalty income, and also remuneration income. Please note that the tax refundable or repayable of consolidated income is calculated and settled only for the current year and does not involve previous or subsequent years. This table shows how to calculate the taxable income of consolidated income. The taxable income of consolidated income equals to annual income, which includes full annual salary income and 80% of service income, 80% of royalties income, and 80% of also remuneration income, multiply 70%. Then deducts the basic deductible amount, which is 60,000 a year. Then deducts the special deductions, which are the three social security items plus housing fund. Then deducts the special additional deductions, such as children education, continuing education, housing mortgage interest, housing rent, elderly supporting, and healthcare. After that, deducts other deductions according to the law or donation, such as special commercial insurance, supplementary pension, etc. Please note that there are some items not included in annual individual income tax returns, such as income from interest, dividends, and bonuses, and income from lease of property, transfer of property, and contingent income, classification of income. The annual bonus, which chooses to use the special tax treatment for bonus separately, stock incentive of listed companies, the one-time compensation income obtained by termination, retirement ahead of schedule, and internal recuperation. Please note that annual bonus which has chosen to be taxed separately may be recalculated into consolidated income in the annual final settlement, which is also called ATR. Okay, let's move to section 2. Do you need to complete the ATR of 2020? Not all the individuals need to conduct the ATR. You don't need to conduct the annual individual income tax returns of 2020 if you are a non-China tax resident in 2020. If you were declared as a tax resident during 2020, but at last you found that you were not fulfill the condition of China tax resident, then you need to transform your taxpayer status from tax resident to non-China resident. And you don't need to conduct the ATR. Instead, you need to arrange a taxpayer status changing before January 15th, 2021. Another situation is that you always declared as non-China resident in 2020 due to stay in China less than 183 days of 2020. So no need to conduct the ATR 2020. If you meet one of above situation, then you don't need to conduct the ATR 2020. If you are China tax resident, you still have chance not to conduct the annual individual income tax returns of 2020 if one of below condition is met. First, the gross consolidated income is not exceeding RMB 120,000 per year, or the amount of retrospective tax payment upon the annual final settlement does not exceed RMB 400, or the annual prepaid tax amount is equal to the annual payable tax amount, or abandoning of the tax refund. There is an exception where the withholding agent fails to withhold the tax pursuant to the law at the time the resident individual derives the consolidated income. And then let's see who is required to complete the ATR. There are mainly 6 kinds of situations required to complete the ATR. First, non-China domiciled individual who change from non-China tax resident to China tax resident. Or a second, tax residents who have comprehensive income from 2 places or more. Tax residents who receive remuneration for independent service, remuneration for manuscripts or royalty income. The fourth, tax residents who receive overseas income. Or the fifth, tax residents who need to adjust salary income or itemize deductions such as healthcare expenses for serious illness. Or tax residents who have additional deductions or donations, etc. Okay, somebody may ask, how can I know whether I satisfy the condition of exemption from the ATR or not? Generally speaking, there are mainly 2 channels. You may ask your employer to check it. The employer has the liability to notify the employee about his or her IIT withholding information. Or you may check it by yourself via IIT app or website. Okay, let's see some situations of tax refund. Under what kinds of conditions that you could get a tax refund? First, comprehensive income is not exceeded RMB 60,000 for the year, but has prepaid tax during the year of 2020. It means your total income wasn't met the tax threshold, but you paid tax during the year. And the second situation is got personal service income, royalty income, and author's remuneration income during the year of 2020, which applied higher prepaid tax rate comparing with the comprehensive income tax rate. Means if your prepaid tax rate of this income are higher than the final comprehensive income tax rate. And another situation is the deductible income special deductions, special additional deductions, and other deductions have not been deducted properly when prepaid the tax during the year of 2020, and did not enjoy or fully enjoy the tax benefits of comprehensive income when prepaid the tax during the year of 2020. Let's say the situations of tax repayment. If the total prepaid tax amount was less than payable comprehensive income tax amount, you may need to pay tax repayment if you met the conditions of the total of annual comprehensive income is exceeding RMB 120,000 and the tax repayment amount is over RMB 400. If you have prepaid monthly IIT properly, there are mainly two kinds of situations that your prepaid tax amount is less than the payable comprehensive tax amount. First, worked for 2 or more employers in the same month and over-deducted the basic deductible amount when prepaid tax. And the basic deductible amount is RMB 5,000 per month. If one has 2 employers in the same month, the 2 employers may apply the basic deductible amount separately. Then the individual has been deducted twice of the basic deduction and paid less tax. Another situation is in addition to wages and salaries, taxpayers also have income from labor remuneration, also remuneration and royalties. After combining the income of various comprehensive incomes and the annual tax rate of using the comprehensive income is higher than the withholding and the prepayment rate. Here we also list some main reasons that may lead the gap between the prepaid tax amount and the payable tax amount of foreigners. Taxpayer status changed, as we mentioned, such as non-tax resident to change to tax resident. And passport combination in the middle of the year after change the new passport. Worked for different employers during the year, etc. Please note that normally the total annual salary income which shall be declared monthly can't be changed during the annual individual income tax returns. If the total annual salary income changed, a tax correction shall apply rather than the annual individual income tax returns. People may want to understand the different tax calculation methods for salary and bonus between China tax resident and the non-China tax resident for domiciled individual in China. Here is a tax calculation rule for tax resident without domicile. For monthly salary income, it applies to accumulative IIT calculation method. Needs to be prepaid, belongs to the comprehensive income. And for annual bonus, the individual could choose to apply the special tax treatment for annual bonus once per year and calculate it separately before December 31st, 2021. After January 1st, 2022, the annual bonus shall be combined into the comprehensive income to calculate IIT. Then move to the tax calculation rule for non-tax resident. For monthly salary income, it shall be calculated and withheld IIT on monthly basis. And for annual bonus or bonus The bonus shall not be aggregated with other salaries of the current month. Such amount shall be apportioned over 6 months for tax computation purpose with no deduction. It also can only be used once per year. That's all for section 2. Let's move to section 3, annual individual income tax return procedure and the case study. Here is the general procedure of annual ATR. The first step is confirmation. Review the comprehensive income status and self-check if one is appropriate to ATR. And the second step is calculation. Compute the comprehensive income tax based on the rule and figure out the gap shall be repaid or refunded. And the third step is application. Arrange the ATR via stipulated channel and complete the tax repayment or refund application. Okay, next, let's look into the time frame of handling the ATR 2020. Actually, the financial year of China is just the same as the calendar year. So the period which needs to be conduct the ATR of 2020 is just from January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. Regarding the handling time frame for the ATR 2020 for normal cases, it's from March 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2021. But a taxpayer non-domiciled in China leaves China before March 1st, 2021, he or she could handle annual settlement before leaving China. Then, talking about the declaration places of ATR, for the one with only one employment, it shall be the in-charge tax bureau where the employer located. For the one with two or above employment at the same time, the taxpayer could choose one location where the employer located. For the one without any employment, it can be handled at where who co-located or the residence places, or the place where the main income source came from. And the newly announced regulation of ATR 2020 added a declaration place for no employment individual, where is the main income source came from. It also clarifies that the main source of income refers to the location of the withholding agent with the largest cumulative income from the three items of labor remuneration, author's remuneration, and the royalties received by the taxpayer during the tax year. Regarding the handling method, there are mainly three handling methods. Handle annual settlement on individual's own, or entrust a tax-related professional service agent or individual to handle, for which the entrusted party is required to conclude a power of attorney with the taxpayer. Handled by the employer or the organization where the taxpayer obtained ongoing remuneration from personal services. If the employee, also including interns, requests the employer to declare the ATR on behalf of the employer shall handle it, or at least provides guidance on how to handle it via website or ITF to the employee or interns. If the employer will handle the ATR 2020 declaration for its employees, below points shall be considered and followed. It needs the supporting documents, written confirmation of entrustment via paper confirmation letters, text messages, WeChat messages, or email. Information or documents regarding comprehensive income, relevant deductions, or other enjoyable tax beneficial which are gained outside of the company, if any. As for the time frame, the writing confirmation and supporting documents shall be ready before April 30th, 2021. And please note that employer shall not declare the ATR 2020 for its employees if there is no writing confirmation of the entrustment. The employee shall take full responsibility for the authenticity, accuracy, integrity of the provided information or documents. Okay, about the handling channels. Taxpayer may handle ATR through the online tax platform, including smartphone, IT app, and the tax authorities will provide the declarations form pre-completing service to the taxpayers pursuant to the provisions. Where it is inconvenient to handle an annual settlement via offset method, taxpayer may handle ATR by mail or at the tax office. Consistent with the 2019 regulations, the newly announcement 2 still encourages taxpayer to choose to process annual accounts through the online tax bureau. If it's not convenient to apply through the online tax bureau, it can also be processed by mail or at the tax service office. At the same time, Announcement 2 provides supplementary explanation on the above methods. Taxpayer who submit a declaration and then make up taxes via mail need to pay attention to the declaration progress and pay taxes in a timely manner through online tax bureau or tax offices. In order to further enhance the convenience of taxpayers' overseas income declaration, and the 2020 financial report will also open the online tax bureau overseas income declaration function. In the 2019 personal income tax comprehensive income settlement and payment involving foreign income, because of the online self-declaration part is not opened, taxpayers who have obtained the foreign income can generally only apply for the final settlement and the payment by mail or by the tax service department. For taxpayers working and residing abroad, the opening of online declaration function for overseas income in 2020 will provide great convenience for them to complete their final calculation in a timely manner. The functions of the online tax bureau will be further optimized to assist the taxpayer in completing their final calculations accurately and efficiently. For example, for errors and omissions in the declaration, the online tax bureau will add and optimize reminders during the declaration process to guide taxpayer to fill in accurately to prevent individual taxpayer from interfering with the calculation by filing in information at will and then canceling the tax refund application normal order. The mobile personal income tax app will set the upper limit of the number of revocations. Okay, the payment method. For tax refund, the taxpayer shall provide a qualified bank account opened in China. Upon examination by the tax authority pursuant to the provisions, tax refund shall be processed. Pursuant to the relevant provisions on Treasury administration, as the locality of the tax authority determine the pursuant relevant regulations which accept the annual settlement declaration. And for tax repayment, taxpayer could pay tax repayment through online banking, by card payment at the tax office post terminal, at a bank counter, or via a non-banking payment organization, etc. There is a simple declaration way for tax refund, which only applicable for the individual whose annual comprehensive income is less than 60,000, but prepaid IIT during the year of 2020. The tax authority would accept a simple declaration way to get the tax refund via tax app. And the handling period of simple declaration is from March 1st to May 31st, 2021. So please pay attention to the Kping Period requirement of the supporting documents. A taxpayer and the withholding agent who handles annual settlement on his behalf and are required to retain the annual settlement declaration form as well as the relevant materials on the taxpayer's consolidated income, deductions, tax paid, or tax incentives, etc., for 5 years concerning from the date of expiry of the annual settlement period. It means you need to keep the supporting documents for ATR 2020 at least 5 years, starting from July 1st, 2021. And announcement 2 also announces several management measures of ATR 2020. Such as no punishment for the first unintentional violation. It is stipulated that if the taxpayer has over-refunded or underpaid the annual tax due to incorrect filing in the declaration information, if the taxpayer takes the initiative or properly corrects it after being reminded by the tax authority may accept the penalty in accordance with the principle of no penalty for the first violation. For taxpayers who have over-refunded or underpaid tax in their annual calculation due to non-subjective reasons, and the above regulations have resolved to a certain extent the taxpayer's concern about correcting the declaration after finding wrong information, and will improve the role of tax return accuracy. Another management measure is ATR 2019 and 2020 will be correlated for taxpayer who apply for the 2020 final tax rebate. If there is a taxpayer who should apply for the 2019 final tax supplement but has not done it, or has been notified by the tax authority that there are doubts in the 2019 final report but refused to correct or explain the situation, it needs to apply for 2019 settlement. After the final tax declaration of 2019 has been made, the declaration has been corrected or the relevant information has been explained, the application for the 2020 final tax refund shall be made. The above regulations link the taxpayers' 2019 declaration record with the 2020 final tax rebate, reminding taxpayers to declare and handle taxes in good faith in accordance with the law, and to fulfill their civic obligation in accordance with the law, which can better protect the legitimate rights and interests of the taxpayer and protect taxpayers' concerns and tax credit history. Here is a flowchart of the ATR. As you can see, each step for the ATR processing from it. First, you need to know about ATR. Then you need to self-check whether you need to do the settlement or not. If the answer is yes, you need to select an option to handle the ATR. Now I'd like to share several case studies with you in order to help you have a better understanding of the ATR. So case 1, company A, it's Wufei in China, hired a foreign employee, Tom, who was declared as a non-tax resident at the beginning of 2020. However, due to COVID-19, Tom extended his stay period in China and stayed about 200 days in China during 2020. Tom only has one position, which is his current position of company A, and all his salary is due to this position. Tom applied tax exemption for foreigners, housing allowance, RMB 5,000 per month. Okay. And below table is Tom's monthly salary and IIT information. Tom has declared monthly IIT properly as non-tax resident each month, but he needs to conduct the ATR due to his taxpayer status changed from non-resident to tax resident. Okay, let's see the solution. Since Tom stayed in China for more than 183 days during 2020, his taxpayer status shall be changed from non-tax resident to tax resident, and he could arrange the change via ATR. Assume that Tom doesn't have any other comprehensive income besides his salary income. Due to tax resident applied to accumulative IIT calculation method, and the IIT calculation rule for salary is different with non-tax resident. Tom's IIT of 2020 shall be recalculated, as this table showed. As you could see from the table, a tax refund of RMB 1,500 shall be applied in Tom's case. Please note that whether there will be a refund, a repayment, or zero of balance will be dependent on each case after calculations. Okay, that's all for case 1. Let's move to case 2. A Chinese employee, Mr. Zhang, is hired by company B, also Wufei in China, from 15th June 2020. Mr. Zhang has worked for another China entity about 4 years with termination date of June 10, 2020. His total salary income of 2020 was over RMB 120,000. Let's see the solution. Since Mr. Zhang got 2 sources of salary income in 1 month, which is June, and his total salary income was over 100 RMB 120,000. He needs to recalculate his total comprehensive income and related tax. If the tax balance amount for repayment is more than RMB 400, he shall arrange the ATR and pay the balance amount. Okay, let's say case 3. Chinese employee Mr. Li is hired by company C, also Wufei in China, and has been dispatched to oversee branch of the company in the US several months during the year of 2020. Mr. Li's monthly salary was paid in China and the US separately. Mr. Li would like to apply the tax credit for the tax that he has paid in the US. Mr. Li is a China tax resident with domicile. Let's see the solution. As a China domiciled individual, Mr. Li needs to report his overseas income to China tax authority via Form B when conduct the ATR in China. Mr. Li's comprehensive income of China and overseas shall be combined, then follow the related calculation rules to compute. If Mr. Li has paid tax in the US, he shall provide the US tax payment certificate and other required supporting documents to the tax bureau in order to apply the tax credit. Okay, let's move to the last section, section 4, summary Q&A. According to our experiences in the past year of annual individual income tax returns, it takes time to file the relevant information, especially when you apply for tax refund. The whole procedure could be very complex and time-consuming. Thus, we would suggest everyone file each month's tax properly to avoid to make the final adjustment during the ATR. Based on DSA's experiences, we summarized some difficulties of the ATR here. The whole procedure is complex, especially when applied for tax refunds. The forms are hard to complete if the individual can't understand the regulations and the requirements well. The tax liability and the related calculation rules are complex, especially for the individual who has both China and overseas income. It may be hard for non-domicile individual to understand his or her tax liability in different situations. So our suggestions are set up a reasonable payroll structure or conduct tax planning in advance. Declare IT each month properly to avoid making adjustment via ATR, as it will be time-consuming to adjust tax via ATR. Have good understanding about China individual income tax law and regulations to avoid any in-compliance operations. And pay attention to the tax status of non-domicile individual and arrange proper declarations. Okay, then you would like to know how the DSA can help you in this regard. We can assist you on individual income tax planning, taxpayer status changing for non-domiciles, and in annual tax return declarations, or providing supporting on answering various questions related to the ATR via hotline, and so on. You may let us know your further inquiries. Okay, that's all for my today's presentation. Thank you. Please let me know if you have any questions. Hi, Sunny.
Thank you very much, Nicole, for sharing your insights with us. I'm sure our audience will have found the presentation quite interesting and informative. I see that we have received quite a few questions on the topic. I think we have enough time to go through at least a couple of them. So let's see what the first question says. If I were declared as a tax resident at the beginning of the year, but found out that I wasn't fulfilling the condition of tax residency in China by the end of the year, so in such a case, should I arrange the taxpayer status change? And can I still enjoy the foreigner tax exemption? What are your thoughts on it, Nicole?
Thank you, Fanny. Yes, where a domiciled individual is predetermined as a resident individual, if he does not satisfy the individual criteria, um, due to reduce the number of days he stayed in China, he shall report to the tax authorities in charge during the period from the day on which he fails to satisfy the resident individual criteria to 15 days from the end of the year. Recompute tax payable amount as non-resident individual and declare tax amount to be paid retrospectively, and shall not be subject to late tax payment fine. Where a tax refund is required, it shall be handled pursuant to the provisions. So the deadline for arrange the taxpayer status changing from resident to non-tax resident is 15th January of the following year. The foreigner tax exempted allowance can be enjoyed even if the taxpayer is a non-tax resident. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. That was quite helpful. So this second question says, if I get a new passport, what are the requirements for tax filing?
For changing passport, firstly, you need to submit your new passport information to your HR. Assume you submit the passport updating information in July, and the HR needs to declare your July IT with your new passport number. And after the July IT is made, and the HR shall take your old and new passport together with other required documents to the tax bureau and combine the information. Then your basic information in the tax bureau's end will be combined. But the tax data in the tax declaration system won't be combined automatically. So individual needs to conduct the annual individual income tax returns if there is any balance needs to be paid or refunded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. This third question says it's on penalties. So it says, if I need to pay additional tax when conducting the annual tax returns, do I need to pay any late penalty?
Okay. You don't to pay late penalty when pay tax repayment during the ATR. However, if you need to arrange tax correction, such as part of your salary wasn't declared properly in the corresponding declaration period, the late penalty may occur. Yes, that's all for my answer.
Okay, and here's an interesting one. It's on annual bonus. And the question is, if I were a non-tax resident and was paid annual bonus, then my status changed to tax resident. Will that affect the tax of my annual bonus?
Annual bonus. Yes, it will affect your annual bonus tax due to the tax calculation rules for annual bonus for tax resident and non-tax resident are different. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. This fifth question says, if I need to pay tax repayment, shall I pay it by myself or by the company? And how about tax refund?
Okay. Actually, it's the individual's personally responsibility to complete the annual tax returns. The tax repayment shall be paid by the individual. In case there is a tax refund, it also will be paid to the individual's account.
Okay. I think this next question would be quite common among the expats. It says that, can a foreign employee apply for the additional special deductions just like Chinese employees?
That's true. I understand that you mentioned foreign employee is actually called as non-domiciled individuals, right? If a non-domiciled individual is a China tax resident of the year, then he could enjoy the additional special deductions just like Chinese employees. But please note that several additional special deductions can't be applied if such kinds of tax exemption have been applied by the employee via tax-exempted allowances for foreigners. Thank you.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. The next question says, I know there is a 6-year rule after tax reform. If I didn't fulfill the rule, do I need to report my overseas salary to China tax authorities?
Okay. About the 6-year rule. If a non-domiciled individual doesn't fulfill the 6-year rule, he doesn't have the tax liability to report his global income to China tax authority. But if the individual's overseas salary is China-sourced income or salary is borne by China entities, he or she may need to report the salary income to China tax authority based on various conditions that may need to be discussed case by case. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can take one more question, and it's on tax correction. So it says, you mentioned about tax correction in your presentation. What's the difference between ATR and tax correction?
Yes. Normally for it's the mainly yes, there are some difference between the two kinds of situation. Normally for tax repayment, which can be settled via annual individual income tax returns, ATR, there won't be any late penalty. But for tax correction, there may be late tax penalty if the tax payment is paid late. And the required supporting documents and the procedure may also different. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicole. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you once again for sharing your insights about IIT with us. And thank you everyone for joining today. If we were not able to answer your questions just now, we'll be sure to address them in our follow-up emails. Also, a recording of this webinar will be shared with you, so keep an eye out for it later. If Nicole's presentation has sparked any questions or concerns about your annual income tax filing, please feel free to reach out to her. Our team is always happy to help you, and we can schedule a quick call or consultation with you to further understand your requirements. That's it for today. We hope to see you in our other future events. Have a nice day ahead. Bye-bye.